Hey mamas, this is Playfully Faithful Parenting, and I'm your host, Joy Wendling. I'm a seminary grad and children's and family minister turned stay-at-home mom to my 5 girls. Spiritual parenting is my calling, and it's my passion to help other mamas disciple their kids using the power of play and their own authentic daily walk with Christ. If you're a mama who wants to introduce your kids to Jesus and watch as the Holy Spirit transforms their lives, this is the place for you. I'm so glad you're here. So let's dive in and see how we can partner with God today. Hello, mamas. Welcome back to Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'm your host, Joy, and I'm so grateful that you are joining us here today. 2 weeks ago, we talked about some of the typical ways that when we are not being intentional as parents, that we can parent our kids to scare them, where we try to scare our kids into compliance or obedience. And we talked about why we should not do that and how that is such a poor reflection of God. Now, I admit I have done it. I have done it way more than I should. And then when I started thinking about discipling my kids in discipline and how I want to be a better reflection of God to my kids in discipline, how I started to notice these moments. And it really made me sad that I would purposefully try to scare my kids. And now I have to admit, I still have to be intentional, especially in the trying to speed them up fashion. It's really challenging sometimes because it works. So this week, we are going to look at why it works. So God designed our brains to keep us safe. And there is a part of our brain that does the problem solving. And then there is a part of our brain that kind of emotions run the show. And when we are scared and our brains believe that we need to be kept safe, whether that's emotionally or physically safe, our emotional part of the brain kicks in and does whatever it needs to do to keep us safe. And there are 4 main responses that our brains can cause us to do in our nervous systems. And so sometimes this is just our body moving before our logical part of our brains can kick in. So last week I drove to Idaho and listened to 4 books on the way there and back. And so one of them was called Brain Body Parenting. And it was so good to help me understand the logistics behind tantrum and behind some of our children's common, what we would call misbehaviors, but they're not doing it on purpose. It is just a natural response of their body to the situation. And so the 4 most common responses when our children's brain or bodies think they are in danger are fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. So we've probably heard of fight and flight. Freeze you may have heard of. Fawn is not as commonly spoken about, and it is more of a learned behavior. It is very typical in abusive homes or in children with like narcissistic parents. And so we're going to talk about all 4 of these, and we're going to look at some biblical examples of these responses in scary situations. And so fear is not always rational. It's not always logical. And so we may know as the parent that our child is not really in danger. But that doesn't mean that that danger is not true for our children. They may still feel that fear in a very real way. And so I want to encourage you to empathize with your children when they are scared and not to belittle the situation or the fear. And also, as I'm talking about fear and emotions, one thing that I find is so incredible about kids is that the emotions they feel, even in play, in pretend play, or even when they're watching a show, those emotions are very real. Now, we may be able to, say we're playing, that we're trapped on a desert island with our kids. And so we're sitting on top of a table and they say, "Oh, there's a shark swimming around the island." For us, we logically know there is no reason to be afraid. But our kids, their emotions that they experience in play are just as equally felt as true emotions from the moment. So if your kids are pretending and they get scared, that is a real and true fear. So which I think that is so amazing and it's such a useful tool for when we are teaching our kids the Bible, that we can help them to really feel and experience the stories of the Bible. But it also can be a challenge when they are afraid. And some of these fight, flight, and freeze responses start happening. All right, so the first one, fight. In kids, this might look like kicking, screaming, spitting, pushing, throwing anything your kids can get their hands on, making fists, even glaring at you, having a hard time breathing, like gasping for air, clawing at the air. All of those can fight trigger when your child feels unsafe. And so I want you to think about in the Garden of Gethsemane, the guards come with Judas to take Jesus away. And what happens? Peter has a sword and he cuts the ear off one of the guards. That was the fight response to fight or flight. The other ones, they flee, they run, but Peter fights. And it was a natural response. And our kids have those same things. And so we need to be intentional and aware. Are our parenting tactics sending our kids into a fight or flight response regularly? Because I personally don't want to scare my kids. I don't want my kids to feel afraid of me. I want to be the safe place for my kids. And so if I'm constantly triggering them into fight, I need to look at what I can control, which is not how they respond to me, but which is how I respond, right? I can't control their fight or flight. Once they are there are tons of techniques that we can use to help our kids to calm down. But in that moment, we need to control ourselves. We need to stay calm. And then we can help share our calm and help our kids and co-regulate them into a place of calm. And that's what Jesus did with Peter, right? He stayed calm and he just healed the guard's ear and was just like, "Peter, this isn't the time." He just stayed calm. But in this fight or flight or freeze, any of these places is not the time for teaching our kids. It is a time of co-regulation, which is sharing our calm with them, and connection. We need to bring our kids back to where their emotions are not in control and they can put their problem solving and logical brain back to work. And when they are in fight, flight, or freeze, they are not thinking logically. They are not capable of problems. All right, the next one, flight. What does this look like in our kids? So it might be our kids start looking around, right? Like, ooh, where can I go? It might be restlessness and excessive fidgeting or doing anything to get away from this situation. Running without concern of their own safety. Like your kid just loses it and just runs. Get me out of here is what their brains are thinking. And so a prime biblical example of flight in a situation of fear is Jonah, right? God calls Jonah to go to Nineveh, and Jonah's like, no, I don't want to do this. And what does he do? He goes the other way, right? He flees. And then on the boat, there's a storm. He knows it's all about him. What does he do? He jumps off the boat, right? So Jonah is just like, get me out of here. Get me out of here. The next common response is free. And so this one, our kids might hold their breath. You might be able to feel their heart rate either pounding or slowing down. They might completely shut down and feel like they can't move. And they might kind of like go into their own brain and totally zone out. They might feel numb. They might start daydreaming and trying to imagine themselves elsewhere. They also might start whining. Whining is a freeze response to fear because it is a way of trying to communicate this helplessness. And so when our kids are whining, they are frozen. They cannot react in any other way except this one. So pay attention. Is your kid whining because they are afraid and they are frozen and just can't do what you've asked them to do because their emotions and their nervous system has taken over? And this one, we are, so in Genesis 35, Jacob is going back to see Esau for the first time after years. And so he packs up all his stuff. And it says in Genesis 35 that God struck terror in all of the people of the cities around where Jacob was, and they were frozen in terror and did not pursue Jacob. So God used this fear to protect Jacob. All of these people were frozen. These cities, multiple cities, were just frozen in terror. They could not pursue Jacob and all of his family with all of his possessions like they wanted to because they were so scared. That's what happens to us. And so then the last one is Fawn. And so this simply means that we obey and comply out of fear. And this is what I think we often are attempting to get out of our children. And it is more of a learned response most of the time than just simply a natural one. But it is about keeping others happy. So imagine if someone came and was like robbing you. And what would you do? You would listen. If someone wanted my purse, bam, here's my purse. Take it, please. I would obey out of fear to get them happy, keep them happy, and let them go. I would just do whatever they asked, right? I mean, while protecting my kids. But if it meant giving them my car, if it meant giving them my wallet, whatever, then I would do that to protect myself and to keep me and my children safe. And so this one I thought about Herod. So Herod had John the Baptist in prison. And the wife, Herodias, did not like John the Baptist. And so she sent her daughter, and Herod promised the daughter, you can have anything you want. So the daughter's like, Mom, what should I ask for? And she says, ask for the head of John the Baptist on a platter. Well, Herod did not want to do this. He did not want to kill John the Baptist, but out of fear of the promise that he had made and the people's response, Herod had the guards kill John the Baptist. That was a moment of fawning. Instead of standing up for what he knew was right, out of fear, he complied. And this is not what I want my children to learn to live like. Not in my home, not when they're in high school, not as adults. I don't want my children to learn that under normal circumstances, we comply out of fear. I want my girls to be brave and bold and to be able to stand up to what they know is wrong and to do the right thing and not comply out of fear. And this is what fawning is it's this response of compliance and obedience out of fear. And how often are we as Christian parents parenting to get this particular response? The threats, the body language, the yelling. We are trying to scare our children into compliance. That is not healthy. That is a reaction of a nervous system that feels unsafe. Mamas, I know you want your children to know you are a safe place. So next time this happens, unintentionally or intentionally, but without thinking all the way through it, I want you to pause. I want you to ask for wisdom and forgiveness from God, and then go and pursue making it right with your children as well. God does not put us in a place of feeling unsafe so that we obey. God does not want us to respond to Him in a fight, flight, freeze, or fawn manner. Jesus says, if you love me, obey me, not if you're scared of me. And so, mamas, this week you can play red light, green light with your kid and teach them about these different responses that our bodies have. And you can use these words in like a red light, green light type game. Call out, fight, and maybe they stand with their fists raised. Flight, and maybe they run away. Freeze, and fawn, and maybe they can just like get down on the ground like a little baby fawn. And just talk about how our bodies react. And it is not something that our kids choose to do. It is their nervous system, their brains protecting them. And so have some empathy and compassion for your kids the next time they have a tantrum. They are so overwhelmed with all of the feelings going on in their body and the situation. They're not choosing to do this. Or the next time you're in a power struggle, why are you continuing the power struggle? Do you, as the mom, feel like you need to win? What is that modeling? We need to model Jesus to our kids, even in discipline. And so when you see these responses in your ask, am I making them feel unsafe? Or how am I making them feel unsafe? Then remind your child you love them, make it right, and help them know that you are a safe place. Mamas, on behalf of God, thank you for loving and playing with His kids. Have a great week. Bye. Mamas, I am passionate about the Connected Families Framework and wanting to help you through parent coaching because it has changed the way I parent. I knew how to teach my kids about Jesus in all the good moments, in the fun, in the play, but I've really struggled with discipline I did not know how to love my kids well in moments of stress and misbehavior and disrespect. And yet, through the Connected Families framework, I have learned how to love my kids unconditionally, even when they are misbehaving. Do I do it perfectly? No. But do I do it better than I did a year or two ago? Absolutely. And you can too. We can show our kids God's unconditional love and that they are called and capable and responsible for their actions in loving ways and ways that point them to the Lord, and do all of that in times of discipline when we may want to yell and scream and just lose it. But by connecting with God first in ourselves and knowing what's going on in us, we can show our kids that they are safe with us. And then we can be equipped to show our kids God's grace and God's unconditional love and show them that they are loved no matter what. All of this while holding them accountable to becoming the person God created them to be. And moms, I can help you do that through parent coaching. It's a 4-session program using the Connected Families framework, and I promise you it can work if you put in the effort. Contact me today at joy@createdtoplay.com to find out more information on how you can sign up to work with me and become a more peaceful, purposeful, and playful parent. Well, mamas, that's it for today. Thanks for joining me on Playfully Faithful Parenting. I'd love to keep the conversation going over on the socials. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. If you felt encouraged or equipped by today's show, do me a favor and leave a review. I can't wait to hear your story. Till next week, keep playing and pointing those littles to Christ.